Adana sat next to her father, her hands fidgeting in her lap. The weight of the past weeks pressed down on her, each moment heavier than the last. Her father leaned forward, his wise, weathered eyes searching hers. "Adana," he began, his voice calm but firm, "you know that Berko is innocent of what they are accusing him of, don't you?" Adana's lips tightened. She nodded slowly, but her words came out hesitant. "I know, Papa. I just need time to think." "Think about what, my child?" His tone was laced with both concern and curiosity. Papa slowly removed his hat and turban. Adana's eyes darted away, her voice barely a whisper. "I have things on my mind, Papa." Her father let out a soft chuckle, shaking his head. "You have always been a stubborn and impulsive child, just like your mother. You know what you want and you always go after it. I know how much you love Berko. And I know how much he loves you. Don't take too long to think, Adana." Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away. "I won't, Papa. But I'm scared." Her father's expression softened, and he reached out, gently placing a hand over hers. "My Hebrew daughter? Scared?" He smiled faintly, his voice steady and encouraging. "Adana, you and Berko have taught me so much about our heritage. You have shown me what it means to be brave. You have given the villagers hope they haven't had in years. Don't throw that away." Adana looked up, her brow furrowed in confusion. "Papa?" Her father's voice grew stronger, filled with urgency. "Our people are looking to you, Adana. They are looking for someone to lead them, to take them over and show them the way. Maybe it's time to draw strength from the ancestors, from the God you serve. This village, it is like your baby. You must find the strength to lift up your people and carry them over." Adana froze, her father's words echoing in her mind. She stared at him, her eyes wide with shock. How could he know? The dream she'd shared with no one but the old man, the vision of her lifting the baby, comforting him. He couldn't possibly know. Her father interrupted her thoughts, his tone calm but firm. "My daughter, you must decide. Are you ready to step into your destiny? To stand beside Berko, not just as his partner, but as a leader for our people?" Adana's breath caught in her throat. The weight of his words settled over her, but so did a spark of resolve. She straightened her back, her eyes meeting his with newfound determination. "I'm ready, Papa," she said, her voice steady despite the tears that threatened to spill. "I won't let my people down. And I won't let Berko face this alone." Her father said with a smile, "That's my daughter." Then he softly added as if to himself, "I know where Berko is. The sun high and the heat intense still radiating over Umatata." Adana wiped her brow as she gets closer to the old man's modest house. Her steps were hesitant, her heart heavy with guilt. When she reached the door, she noticed it was slightly ajar. She paused, her hand hovering before knocking. Gathering her courage, she knocked lightly. The slight force of her knock pushed the door open. She hesitated again, then stepped inside cautiously. Just then the door to the back creaked open. Berko stood there, his presence both startling and comforting. His face, a mixture of sadness and strength, sent a wave of emotions crashing over her. She opened her mouth to speak but hesitated. Berko broke the silence. "Baba went for a walk." She smiled an awkward smile. The room seemed to hold its breath as Adana looked at him. Adana's heard her heart pounding so loudly she feared Berko could hear it. He stood there, framed by the doorway, his presence overwhelming as he stepped past her. His expression was unreadable, his eyes shadowed by a weight she couldn't begin to fathom. Her throat tightened as the words she had rehearsed 100 times fought to escape. Tears welled up in her eyes, blurring her vision. Finally the dam broke and her voice cracked as she spoke. "I'm so sorry, Berko," she said, the words tumbling out in a torrent of pain and guilt. Her hands trembled as the confession poured forth. They said you and Berko Jr. would come up missing, and that your bodies would be found in a ditch somewhere if I didn't serve you the papers." Her voice broke completely and the tears spilled over. She couldn't look at him, couldn't bear to see the hurt in his eyes. Berko stood still for a moment, the weight of her words hanging in the air like a stone. Then, without a word, he turned and pulled her into his arms. His embrace was fierce, desperate, as if letting her go might mean losing her forever. Adana sank into him, her sobs muffled against his chest. He held her tightly, his hand gently stroking her back, his strength enveloping her like a shield. His heart thundered against hers, and for a moment, the world outside ceased to exist. They stayed that way for what felt like an eternity, their silence speaking volumes. Finally, Berko pulled back just enough to look at her, his hands still resting on her. His eyes, filled with a mixture of pain and love, searched hers. I know, Adana, he said quietly, his voice steady but heavy with emotion. Adana's breath hitched. You know, she whispered, disbelief and relief mingling in her tone. Berko turned away from her, his gaze far off, as if staring into a horizon only he could see. His jaw tightened, his hands clenching at his sides. I know, he said again, his voice calm but tinged with a sadness that cut through her. Adana stepped closer, her hand hesitating before resting lightly on his arm. Berko, I didn't know what to do. I was so scared. He turned back to her, his eyes softening as he cupped her face gently in his hands. I know, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. And I'm still here, Adana. We're still here. The tension between them eased as she leaned into his touch, her tears subsiding. Relief coursed through her, mingled with a deep gratitude for the man standing before her. In his gaze she found forgiveness, and in his arms she found solace. That evening, as they walked toward the village with the blessing of the old man, Adana turned to Berko and asked, How did you know Berko? Berko replied, I have a few faithful Hebrew brothers planted in Omatata. They keep me informed of everything. I know about the secret society that Chief Okoro and Senior Father have brought into the village. I know how terrified the people are of the duo. They walked in silence for a while. Adana's brow furrowed as she finally spoke, her voice low yet resolute. Berko, there's a group in Omatata. They call themselves the Set-Apart Ones. They're kind, good people. But I don't know, I can't tell if they're with us or against us. Berko turned to her, his expression softening into a trusting smile. Adana, he began, his voice steady and calm, when I couldn't see you anymore, I didn't stop. I kept preaching to the people, those who would still listen. But as things grew more dangerous, staying in Omatata became impossible. Adana's breath hitched as he continued, the Set-Apart Ones, they were formed out of necessity. I had nothing to do with it, but they came together for their own safety. They're truly Hebrew, Adana. Omatata has many small groups, but only God knows their hearts. Remember this, those who are not against us are for us. Many of our people are scattered around the world, each with a different calling, a unique assignment. Adana nodded, her eyes intent on his every word. I know Aunt Nia meets with her friends sometimes. I've always wondered. Berko's gaze turned serious, his voice filled with quiet fervor. Adana, people are starving for truth. Lies have spread like a plague. We've abandoned the path set before us. We've turned away from the commandments, from the holy days. Instead, we've clung to traditions that memorialize moments, a baby in a manger, a grave. But we've left off the essence, the prescription our God gave to us. As they drew near home, they stopped at the baobab tree. The sun dipped low, casting golden streaks across the vast expanse of the baobab tree's branches. Berko and Adana sat beneath its sheltering canopy, the weight of their conversation hanging heavy in the warm evening air. Adana's eyes glistened, her voice trembling. I understand, Berko. We've lost our way. But we can't give up. Berko leaned closer, his tone deepening with conviction. Even the Master's disciples struggled with this. They wanted to memorialize the mountain where Moses and Elijah appeared alongside the Messiah during the Transfiguration. They wanted to build shrines to the moment, to the place. Adana tilted her head, a thought striking her. Is that why no one knows where Moses' body is buried? Berko smiled faintly, his eyes glimmering with understanding. I believe so. God knew we would build shrines, worship the body, and elevate the day above him. But he doesn't want our worship confined to relics or moments. He wants it all, our hearts, our lives, our faith in him alone. The air around them grew still, the weight of truth settling deep into Adana's soul. For the first time in a long while, she felt clarity, an unshakable resolve rising within her. They continued their path home through the woods. Berko, for a minute I forgot my mission and who I am, Adana confessed. I am Hebrew, Adana declared. Berko replied, so did I. I almost forgot that I came from a long line of kings. We were being tested. Did we fail him, Berko? Adana asked. No, we did not fail him, Berko said. He prepared us. Berko added, we will pick up our mantle and our cross, Adana interjected. And carry our people, his people over, Berko finished. The God of our ancestors will fight for us. We just need to be faithful and obedient. Berko reached for her hand, his touch firm yet tender. We must carry this truth forward, Adana. For our people, for Omatata, for the God of our ancestors. And in that moment they silently vowed to do just that. They walked hand in hand back to the village ready for the battle that lay ahead. Enjoying each other's company as they go.